All right, Alex, I want to go to you first. Do you think that they were giving their brother a pass, or that this is their truth?
When I first heard these allegations, I was horrified like anybody else. But, I believe that this family at this point is being unfairly pilloried, because what did they expect the parents to do? They took what seems to me to be reasonable action under the circumstances. I mean, yes, some people say they should have called the police. Well, what does that mean when you call the police? We're talking about an arrest. We're talking about the possibility of some form of incarceration, whether it's in jail or in a juvenile facility. We're talking about the 14-year-old being taken out of the home and put who knows where. And based upon my experience dealing with many people, juveniles and people in the justice system, they're not put in very nice places. They're not given proper treatment. If anybody believes the government is investing a lot of money in psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers to help deal with these type of problems, they're living on a different planet. So the parents did what sounded reasonable. They did take the kid out of the home for a while. They did try to get him some type of treatment. They brought the family together. They discussed it. The parties recognized that something had gone wrong, and they try to forgive each other. There's no absolute answer to how a problem like this needs to be addressed. There really isn't. And the family chose to address it this way. Who's to say they're wrong? This happened when this kid was 14 years old. And yes, it was wrong to touch children. I agree with that. But if they were somehow able to address the problem and make sure that their family was safe and make sure that this was not going to happen again, isn't that the ultimate goal that somebody wants in this type of a situation? And so they bring these girls, these are young girls, okay? They're trying to deal with the media. They're trying to answer the questions as best they could. And based upon everything I heard, it sounds to me like they were trying to be as truthful as they could about the circumstances. My opinion is let this family live in peace when it comes to that issue.
Interesting. Let's see what Joseph Scott Morgan has to say. Joseph, your take on the whole situation.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, what I find the most troubling about this, just trying to be as objective as possible, is I'd like to take a long, hard look at where the information came from. I know that my colleague on the air tonight has spent probably quite a bit of time dealing with issues relative to confidentiality in the courts, and particularly as it applies to juveniles. And this is a case that was handled apparently under the umbrella of the juvenile system, and those records are very much protected. And it seems to me that there's something afoot here when, as one of the girls had mentioned, a tabloid organization had released the information. I think what I would want to look at this from an investigative standpoint, turning the investigation away from this issue that's apparently been resolved and back onto the government officials, because a lot of this happens when it comes to somebody being able to make a quick buck. I'd like to know who released this information to the news media, because if they're dealing with tabloids pay money for things, and somebody got richer off of this, or got rich off of it, or made a few bucks to rub together. And I think that's really where the focus needs to be at this point in time. But the culture that we live in, I don't see them. They're going to put the eye more on the salacious side of this, as opposed to going to this issue of privacy and some government official that is, can slink back into the shadows, that's handed these files over to someone. That's who really needs to be brought into the light, as far as I'm concerned.
And Alex, what do you think of what Joseph is saying? Do you agree?
I agree with him an absolute 100%. And the very fact that this information was released by either the criminal justice system or the police or the juvenile justice system, and it came out exposed, even though it's not supposed to be exposed, and even though the parties were promised it was not going to be exposed. To me, that's even more evidence why going to the police in a matter of this sensitivity, you should approach that with extreme caution, because it's already blown up in their face. And if the police, criminal justice system, and the juvenile justice system can't be trusted to maintain confidentiality, why on earth would you think they could be trusted to address this type of issue involving this degree of sensitivity with this family? You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That's a very interesting point. And do you think this show, well, it hasn't been officially canceled, it's just been suspended. Alex, should they put this show back on the air?
Let me tell you something. I have never seen a single episode of that show. I'm not interested in seeing that show. It's not an area that particularly interests me. I never heard of the Duggars before this thing exploded in the media. I have no opinion one way or another whether or not that show should go back on the air or should, vanish into infinity. I'm more concerned about the family. I really am. And they seem like a nice family. They're trying hard. It's hard to maintain a nice family in the America that we live in today. And they're trying as hard as anybody. And I respect that. And I think they should be given an opportunity to continue to maintain their family and to grow a nice family if they can.
Joseph, your take is, should they put the show back on the air?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them necessarily putting the show back on the air. And I, like Alex, I've never watched the program. I actually had to speak to my college-age daughter to find out about it. But just from being very just from a personal standpoint, just judging these people as people, not as some type of reality cardboard cutouts. They do deserve a fair shake, I think. But as many of us can attest to, if some wily producer out there sees an angle for this thing, this dynamic is suddenly placed into this, I can guarantee you it will be back on the air because there's a way to make money on it.